In this video, we will uncover an essential and often overlooked part of history, that is slave breeding. This harrowing aspect of slavery was a deliberate system designed to exploit human lives for economic gain. The aim here is to educate because understanding the past is critical to shaping a better future. So get ready for an in-depth journey into the 10 facts about slave breeding that your school likely failed to teach you. So let's dive right in. But before we do so, if you are new here, consider subscribing. Don't forget to turn on post notification because that will notify you whenever we drop new content on this channel. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and share. So slave breeding was not a random occurrence. It was a calculated and systematic practice in the Americas, particularly in the southern United States. Enslaved people were deliberately forced to reproduce to increase the labor force, as importing slaves from Africa became less viable after the transatlantic slave trade was abolished in 1807 in Britain and 1808 in the United States. Enslaved women were reduced to their reproductive capabilities, while enslaved men were often paired with multiple women to maximize offspring. This exploitation treated human beings as livestock, stripping them of their humanity and agency. A key component of slave breeding was the legal principle of pater sequitur ventrem, a Latin term meaning that which is born follows the womb. This law dictated that children born to enslaved women inherited their mother's enslaved status regardless of the father's status. This principle incentivized enslavers to enforce breeding, as every child born to an enslaved woman became a new source of labor, further perpetuating the system of slavery. Enslaved women were dehumanized and seen as breeders. Their ability to bear children was commodified, and they were often assigned to reproduce as part of a plantation's business plan. These women had no control over their reproductive rights. Many were subjected to sexual violence either by their enslaver or by men choosing for their physical traits. This exploitation was designed to produce stronger and more resilient laborers. While many associate slavery with plantation labor, slave breeding also catered to other economic demands. In urban areas, enslaved children were often sold for domestic work or industrial labor. Some were groomed for specific trades like blacksmithing, carpentry, or even working on ships. This diversification in labor market shows how deeply ingrained slavery was in the economic fabric of society. Pseudo-scientific theories such as eugenics were often used to justify slave breeding practices. Enslavers believed they could selectively breed enslaved people to enhance desirable traits such as physical strength or docility. This practice dehumanized individuals, treating them as experimental subjects rather than human beings. It also laid the foundation for racist ideologies that perished long after slavery was abolished. Despite the horrific conditions, enslaved people resisted slave breeding in numerous ways. Women often risked their lives to terminate pregnancies, refusing to bring children into a life of bondage. Others used contraceptive method or feigned illness to avoid forced reproduction. Some enslaved men and women also formed deep loving relationships, actively resisting the commodification of their bodies by asserting their humanity. Slave breeding was immensely profitable. Enslaved children were often sold for exorbitant prices, especially during the peak of the internal slave trade in the 19th century. This profit incentivized enslavers to perpetuate the system, as each new generation represented significant economic gain. In states like Virginia, breeding enslaved people became a primary industry after the decline of tobacco farming. The psychological impact of slave breeding was profound. Enslaved individuals live in constant fear of separation from their families, as children could be sold at any time. Women faced unimaginable trauma from repeated sexual exploitation and the forced removal of their offspring. This emotional devastation affected generations, leaving scars that extended far beyond the abolition of slavery. The abolition of the transatlantic slave trade did not mean an end to slavery. Instead, it led to an increased reliance on domestic slave breeding to maintain the labor force. Enslavers became even more aggressive in their pursuit of reproduction, knowing that importing new laborers from Africa was no longer an option. Some historians classify slave breeding as a form of genocide, as it thought to erase the cultural identities of enslaved Africans. Children born through slave breeding were stripped of their heritage and forced to adopt the identities imposed by their enslavers. This systematic erasure of culture was part of a broader strategy to dehumanize enslaved people and deny them any sense of belonging or identity. So, in conclusion, the history of slave breeding is a dark but crucial part of understanding the legacy of slavery. By exploring these facts, we can confront the realities of the past and work toward a future that acknowledges and learns from these atrocities. So, thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into untold histories. Your engagement helps us continue to bring these stories to light.